Shalom, Millbrook. First of all, I want to thank a few people. Of course, first my family. I told them absolutely not, they could not come tonight because I don't want them to see me in a vulnerable state, as Ms. Hardy put it. But Ashton is my best friend in the world. He wrote that intro about 15 minutes ago. He started it in econ this morning. He didn't listen to a word Mr. Powers said the entire class, but thank you for the words. I love you with everything in my body. I want to thank Mr. Smith for helping me with the edits to my travel talk and making this an easy process. Mr. Coughlin, Johnny, Henry, and Angelina for making Careless Whisper continue to sound beautiful. My three advisors over the year, Mr. Krause, who I loved and left me, Coach Rogers, who I loved and left me, and Mr. Morrissey, who is genuinely one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. You've always been supporting me and awaiting this chapel talk. And finally, Ms. Hardy, your absence was felt in not only these chapel talks, but campus in general, and it makes my heart happy that you're back. And I don't usually ask for rounds of applause, but I really want to give Ms. Hardy one for being back in the chapel for a Thursday night. Okay, so my name is Jason Weiss. I am 19 years old, and I am a four-year sixth former. I love fantasy football, Jewish comedians, the New York Mets, adults who curse in front of me, cinnamon buns, and Pat Costin. I don't like cilantro, sweating, cats, octopus, post-facial reconstruction surgery Michael Jackson, being in a house alone at night, rats, mice, frogs, and birds, the canopy walkway, and Philadelphia sports fans. Some things I don't understand are Sudoku, the game 2048, Mr. Tom's hair, and taxes. Some things that really bother me: when kids read directly off the screen during their PowerPoint presentations, when people order their steaks anything cooked more than medium rare, and I cannot stand the facial hair rule at the Millbrook school. We should get on that, Mr. Downs. Through my past experiences over the last few years, I noticed that it's really easy to start daydreaming during a chapel talk. And the next thing you know, you zone out for 30 minutes. Mr. Powers always says the average human attention span is 7 minutes, but frankly, it usually takes me 30 seconds to a minute for my attention to disappear in everything I do. So I'm not going to say you have to listen, but maybe just try to follow along. I wanted to share the story of my Millbrook journey, why I ended up here, and what this place has done for me. I'm from the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I'm the youngest sibling in the Weiss family. My brother is 28, my sister's 26. I had a tough time growing up. I went to a rigorous school from nursery through third grade called Heschel. We had Hebrew classes 2 times a day. Kids knew the multiplication table by the end of second grade, and long division started in third. Reading logs and popcorn reading was an everyday thing, and these kids excelled. Absolute geniuses. I was never that kid. During popcorn reading, whenever it was my turn, I would hear kids sigh of annoyance and disappointment because I had trouble reading with fluency and it frustrated them. During math class, we did mad minutes. If you don't know what those are, you have 1 minute to get as many problems completed as you could on the sheet. And usually there would be 30 or so problems to do on the sheet. And if I was lucky, I would get 4 or 5 done because I couldn't understand anything. After the mad minutes, we would go around the class through each problem. And every single time it came around to me, I once again heard the sighs as I never had an answer, and the teacher always needed another kid to help Jason out. As a third grader, this obviously took a toll on me mentally, but I was too young to realize it. I was an underweight kid who couldn't do math, couldn't read, had few friends, and got daily migraines, throwing up 3 or 4 times a week because of my anxiety. Then the fourth graders, as well as my grade, started calling me Asian Princess. They called me this because when I smiled, my eyes closed and I looked Asian. Obviously today I wouldn't care, and I would find the nickname just racist and stupid. But as a third grader, it made me feel like garbage. So I started to get shoved in lockers, get slapped in the neck at lunchtime, and even got my pants pulled down in class. This was an elite private school in New York City, and the teachers had no solution and essentially gave up on me. I was so scared and lacked so much confidence that I missed 48 days of school that year. I also started to gain an insane amount of weight. I turned to food as a coping mechanism, and this started a long and painful relationship between food and myself. Looking back on this time now, I feel for my parents. I can't imagine what it must have been like to see their third grade child struggling like this. My parents realized I needed to get out of the mainstream school system and go to a school for kids with learning disabilities. The funny thing is that I was not and still am not diagnosed with dyslexia or ADHD or ADD. I just have processing issues. I ended up at a school called Stephen Gaynor. Campbell Thomas was an alumni. If anyone remembers Zia or Elizabeth Finch, they also went there. And I'm pretty sure Abby Weiner had a short stint there. But I guess we don't speak of her name anymore. I started in 4th grade and had no idea what to expect. All my parents told me was that this school was better for me and the kids would be more like me. On the first day, a kid named David Major, who is now a 6'5" basketball player with multiple Division I offers, and a kid named Devin Kadali, who is now a top 10 ranked baseball player in the state, committed to Vanderbilt, came up to me and introduced themselves. Already, I had more friends in 5 minutes than I had in all my years before. The Stephen Gaynor School changed me. The kids were more like me, the teachers never gave up on me, and the confidence in myself grew dramatically. In 6th grade, I decided my time at Stephen Gaynor School had to come to an end after I realized that I was the best student in my grade. When I'm the best student in the grade, there is an issue. We were popcorn reading Flat Stanley in 6th grade, and the kids could not read with fluency. It frustrated me a lot, but I never let out those sighs because I knew what those did to the mind. But it was time for me to try a mainstream school system again, now that I had confidence in myself. However, throughout the 3 years at Gaynor, my addiction to food kept growing and growing and growing throughout those years. In 7th grade, I switched to a school called Birchwath in Lenox, a school 5 blocks away from me that cramped around 500 kids in a tight little building that looked like an apartment from the outside. At this point in my life, I was morbidly obese in the 99.7th percentile in weight class for my age. Being the fat kid, I knew my only way to popularity and having friends was to be the funny one. And that's where class clown Jason was born. I was extremely popular, always smiling, always cracking jokes, always trying to make everyone laugh and always positive. That was the only thing I had. When I went home, guess what I did? I ate and I ate and I ate. I was just in pain. My friends would scoop my boobs, and all the time as a joke, and I laughed and encouraged it because I had to. But I was in so much pain inside. Hence why, if you guys didn't know, I got boob surgery this year. If anyone was wondering, I got the boobies looking all pretty and small now. But it all started then. Then I realized, that's not what that word says. Then I reached high school at Birchwathen, in 9th grade. I came into 9th grade standing in at 5'7", 220 pounds. There was no muscle, just pure fat. If someone jumped on me, they'd fly to Asia. My friends started to smoke and drink and go to parties and hang out with other kids from other schools, so I tried to join them. It was hard. It was hard knowing that when I walked into the room with kids, the first thing they noticed about me was my weight. I tried all the tricks. Wearing a sweatshirt to hide my fat even when it was burning hot outside, putting the couch pillow over my stomach and hugging it to try and hide it, pulling my shirt out or down to make myself look skinny, literally everything. But I just had too much social anxiety. Eventually, I just gave up on my life outside of school. I went to school, made jokes, did very poorly academically, then went home, ate food, took a long nap, ate more food, played video games, and then cheated on my homework assignments, not going to sleep until 3, 4, or 5 in the morning every single night. This was a repeating cycle in 9th grade. I quit basketball, baseball, and football, and every Friday and Saturday night, I found myself playing Fortnite, ordering in from 2 or 3 restaurants per night, and scrolling through my Snapchat stories, seeing all my friends doing stuff. went to the line above. I would order Chinese food for dinner, and then an hour later order a burger, and then order some donuts and ice cream at 2 in the morning. I ate because I was sad, and I was sad because I ate. Food was my best friend, enemy, and therapist. I expressed my emotions through food. I even changed the email to mine on my family's Grubhub account so my parents wouldn't get email receipts whenever I ordered. Which, now that I think about it, was an extremely smart move and a great move by Jay. My grades were atrocious. I continued to sleep and eat and play video games, and I continued to put on a fake smile in school every day to make other people happy. At the end of the year, I found myself at 5'10", 260 pounds. Knowing that I was a small, white, 15-year-old Jewish boy that weighed more than LeBron James and every quarterback in the NFL really took a mental toll on me. I knew it was bad when I woke up and thought about not what I was going to do that day, but what I was going to eat. The social toxicity and lack of support in New York City were just a detriment to me, and I couldn't handle it. Being alone and knowing that no one is thinking about you besides your family sucks. Being alone and having goals that you know you won't have the dedication and to accomplish sucks. Being alone and trying to convince yourself that you're happy is one of the worst feelings possible. Eventually, I made a decision that boarding school was maybe right for me. When I started looking at boarding schools, I was originally only looking at Masters, which is a school in Dobbs Ferry, New York, which now that I look back on it, it's just, I don't even know why I was looking at Masters. I was visited, I was ready to go there. Soon enough, I got a text from one of my brother's best friends named Austin Urban. Austin graduated from Millbrook in 2012 and went to Elon with my older brother. He told me to consider Millbrook and to ask him any questions that I had. I visited twice, interviewed with Miss Grover, and fell in love with this place. The reason why was simple. Miss Grover promised me that at Millbrook, I would have a sense of family and community that I hadn't gotten in the city. That I would have teachers that had my back and wanted to see me succeed, and kids who knew my name and cared about me. Just that promise alone made me fall in love with the school. The cherry on top was the email I got from Coach Colin Brown, the head football coach at the time, telling me all about the program and that he would love to have me on the team. And although that was just a copy and pasted email that he sent out to all the applicants that had football as an interest, that just made me feel wanted, which in retrospect I now see is exactly the point of the copy and paste email game. So shout out to admissions. But that was a new feeling for me, being wanted. When I got into Millbrook, my mom cried. I was sitting in my room not knowing what the hell was happening in my life, and I hopped right into a dark shower because that was my escape from reality. I remembered that my entire life, I always thought boarding school was a punishment. My image was that every single boarding school was a military school, and only kids with very troubling issues attended. So I found it ironic how I found myself on my way. When I started Millbrook, I was obviously extremely nervous. The transition from walking outside and seeing apartment buildings and smelling dog pee to walking outside your dorm and seeing the fields and smelling the fresh, crisp manure in the Millbrook air was obviously shocking. The difference in kids was weird to me. And if you grew up on the Upper East Side, you relate to this, but I went from the richest Upper East Side Jews who all went to the Hamptons on the weekends in their helicopters and attended one of the University of Michigan, Penn, Cornell, Wisconsin, Emory, or Tulane, to a bunch of Christian kids from New Canaan and Darien that all apply to SMU and TCU and go to Nantucket. I didn't even know what St. Lawrence was before I came to Millbrook. I didn't even realize that Nantucket was a vacation place. I quickly learned that it was the Christian version of the Hamptons. It was a really, really weird change for me. For the first month, I hated it. I hated my roommate. I didn't leave my room. My old school was ready to take me back in New York City. The biggest thing, though, is that I failed to get the sense of community and family that was promised to me by Miss Grover. Eventually, I said some stupid things, naturally, regarding Millbrook that found me in Mr. Skogland's office, who was the dean of students at the time, for those of you who didn't know that. Within the first month, I was already a name on the administration's radar. In that meeting with Mr. Skogland, Ms. Whitehouse, and my advisor at the time, Mr. Krause, I believed that the talk was handled extremely poorly on the school's end. Let me preface this by saying that Mr. Skoglund and I had our issues over the years, but I do think he's a good man, and we are fine now, maybe even best friends. My issue looking back on it now is that Mr. Skoglund failed to realize that I was struggling with buying in and struggling with culture shock. Instead, he criticized me for my comments and told me that, and I quote, maybe boarding school wasn't the right fit for me. He was simply trying to push me out of the school. It was the same sense of someone giving up on me that I felt at my first school. All that conversation did was light a fire in me. He had pissed me off so much that the only thing I wanted to do was prove him wrong. It's an awful, awful feeling when someone doesn't believe in you. When your teacher doesn't give you an A on a paper you know you deserved an A on. When your coach doesn't put you in when you know you were the person that could have turned the game around. You know there's something there. You see the potential, you see the promise, but they don't. I wanted to show Mr. Skoglund and everyone else that I belonged at this school, and that Millbrook taking a chance on me would prove to be the right choice. The first step to that was buying into the culture. I wanted to believe what Ms. Grover said to me in the preliminary interview. But to put it simply, I just didn't feel that support, family, or community that Ms. Grover did promise me I would get. In our first football practice my freshman year, Coach Brown took all the big guys. We call them the beef in football. What is it, big boys who eat on the field? Is that what it is? Big boys eat everything on the field. That's what beef stands for. We had 2 guards and a ball in between the 2 guards with no center. These are all positions in football, if you don't know. Coach Brown then looked at the remaining guys and said, "Who knows how to snap a football?" Without hesitation, I raised my hand and said, "Me, coach. I played center for 4 years before this." I said this knowing damn well I'd never played a snap center in my life, and I was coming off a year not playing football. But I knew that was my shot, and I knew that I was better than everyone else. Coach Brown had faith in me and gave me that starting spot. We had a scrimmage. Gunnery and Perky Yeoman came to our field on September 22nd, 2018, to get everyone back into the swing of things football-wise. After that game, Coach Brown would always give game awards, a sledgehammer for the best tackler, a big wooden M for the guy who stepped up and made big plays, and a ball painted blue for the guy who played quality by-the-book, high IQ football. My locker was in the very entrance of the locker room away from the team. If you're in the football, hockey, or lacrosse team, you know what locker I'm talking about. It's practically outside the door. My locker was in the, away from the camaraderie, all of that. It was just Jalen and me in those lockers. It was obviously hard to buy into the culture of the team when, as a new kid, my locker was essentially outside the door. Coach Brown stood up in the locker room after that day and gave out the sledgehammer to Ian Devine. He gave out the wooden M to Mike Nassif, and then he got to the ball. He stood up and held the ball in his hand and said, "The hands play ball." We asked a lot out of this kid. He came in, didn't make a single bad snap, knew what he was doing, and did his job. The ball goes to Jason Weiss. The smile on my face, my heart dropping, the feeling of all the other guys who I didn't even know a few weeks ago patting me on the back and cheering for me and acknowledging me, that moment is not only something that I will never forget, but it's a moment that I think of when I lose faith in myself. In that moment, the promise that Miss Grover made to me was fulfilled. I felt like I was finally part of a family, and from then on, the thought of leaving Millbrook was crazy. And every game, every practice, every kid on that team was what filled my mind. So there was the start of my love for this place. One moment of appreciation and acknowledgement that led to me gladly buying in. I became obsessed with people believing me. It was a feeling, as mentioned earlier, that I never got from anyone else besides my family. Freshman year flies by. I met amazing people. My friend group's group chat starts that year and has not changed since then. I played JV ball for Hall of Fame coach Mark Clisby. I played my first year of baseball with the first of what would end up being one of my 4 head baseball coaches in 4 years at Millbrook. I lost 60 pounds from eating straight eggs, chicken, avocado, cheese, and if I behaved, I'd reward myself with an apple. I finagled my way into getting a B- in global geography, which at the time was a huge win for me, and I went into summer feeling great about this place. The biggest impact on my life, however, from this year came from Mr. Pearson. There were 2 occasions when Mr. Pearson changed my life that year. One night when he was on duty earlier in the year, he commented that I looked good, and it looked like I'd been losing weight. That's it. In all seriousness, up to that point in my life, other than the "Jason, you're so funny," and the other compliments I received out of pity in my life from other people and family, that was the first genuine compliment I've ever received. The first time someone looked at me in the eyes and told me something so simple. That inspired me to keep going. It made me realize that I could do it, and I was doing it. And I'll never forget that night in the common room. The second occasion when Mr. Pearson came later in the year towards the end, also an on-duty night for him during check-in. I hadn't really understood what leadership positions were at Millbrook. I didn't understand the actual impact of having a dorm leader or PC label on your door. And although it may not mean much to you, it was literally everything for me. I also didn't understand that the prefects really did have to do with a lot, if not most of the foundation of the culture at the school. But Mr. Pearson said while sitting back on his iPad playing PUBG, "I can see you as a dorm leader or prefect." No eye contact, just grinding on PUBG, and he said that. To him, that was just a thought. And to me, that became my goal. That was the way I was going to show Mr. Skoglund that he was wrong. That was the way I was going to prove Miss Grover that she was right for accepting me. That was the way I was going to show everyone that I belonged here. Sophomore year comes. God, the worst year of my life. Everything was terrible. I gained 25 pounds back. I took chemistry, which I'm still under the impression is simply an impossible course to succeed in. I got pretty bad acne. I played terribly in both the football and basketball seasons. My friend group had a sit-down conversation with me saying that I changed and that they essentially would all stop being friends with me if I didn't change back. The girl situation had me playing Marvin's Room and Bon Iver songs on repeat in my room. And the senior class of 2020, especially the senior boys in case, some of the worst human beings I've ever been around. I can complain about them for hours. Everything about it sucked. But what I learned that year was that I needed to power myself to face reality, to hold myself accountable, to push past pain, learn to love what I feared, and live to my fullest potential while finding out who I really was. That's a direct quote from David Goggins, if anyone was wondering. And once I accomplished that, the only thing left to do was to go to war with myself, because you are your greatest competition. It's also a Goggins quote. Shout out Greg Levin for showing me Dave Goggins. And for just being a beautiful man. Now I know I want to get this out of the way before I keep going. I'm not the skinniest man. I'm not claiming that. I'm a big guy. You could definitely recognize my footsteps if I was walking on the floor above you. But I'm better than I was when I started. And that's all someone can ask for is improvement every single day. I'm schwitzing. It's hot in here. Really hot. I think I'm having a heart attack. And everything that was bad when I got here almost 4 years ago has been getting better every single day. With a few bumps along the way. And I know how people feel about me. Trust me, you're not shy about it, student body. I've walked outside the dining hall alone during extra help to hear from a prom window a girl scream, "Jason Weiss, you fucking suck," only to turn around and see no one but curtains hiding their faces. I've heard every single crazy rumor about me, some that are even so creative that I almost want them to be true. I've seen and heard the petition to remove me as prefect be talked about in front of me. I've walked by someone to say hi, only to hear back in a serious tone, and I quote, "My day was so good until I saw you." I've been told on numerous occasions that I never deserved prefect. I was referred to only as fat boy last year by a couple of kids in case, who I now happen to love. And I've entered war with several faculty members throughout the year. Weird how things work. Really, really weird. In no way am I playing victim here. Not playing victim. I've done some terrible things. Let's move on from that. I'm just acknowledging what I already know. I know some people have pure hatred in their hearts for me. But so what? It's life. I've come to terms with that. And guess what? And hear me out here. Millbrook needs me. Just listen. Every school culture needs me. The guy who's going to be loud and break the silence and try to put a smile on your face even when 85% of his jokes don't land. The guy who's controversial, but at the end of the day is going to go to the hockey game and say the strangest chirps at the opposing players to a point where they have to contemplate the randomness of the chirp they just heard. Someone who's going to start the argument with a faculty member when the entire student body wants to say something but can't. But it's not just me. Every school needs a Freddie Hamilton who's going to do his best to make sure everyone loves the place and supports every competitor that puts on a blue or white jersey. Every school needs a David Joel Emmanuel, that's going to throw down a dunk that will mud your face. Every school needs a Chris Diaz that's going to go out there and look cute no matter what he does. Every school needs a Miss Burke and Miss Alonji who will wrap every single ankle in this room until their hands fall off just to protect you all. Every school needs a Juliette Drury, Christina Bellin, and Julia Mina. It's going to go out and represent their institution in hardcore Model UN meetings. Every school needs a dean of students like J.J. Morrissey. He's going to step up at a Monday morning assembly and fire everyone up to let them know just how special this place is and why this next week will be the best week of your lives if you let it be. Every school needs a Mr. Livesey to excite students in the classroom and make them fall in love with learning. Every school needs a Mr. G or a Mr. Bucci or a Mr. Coach Jack Dog Harlan who's going to come in, buy into the culture, and do their best to contribute and influence the lives of their students. Every school needs a Mr. Whiting who's going to teach you the fundamentals of writing a solid analytical essay as a 14 or 15-year-old so you can go on and win the Blaine History Prize as a senior. I can go on and on about the role that each person in this room makes. Doesn't matter if you're as loud or controversial or gets canceled as much as I do, or as quiet and mysterious as Greg Levin. Every single person in this room makes or breaks a school culture. Millbrook needs me, and it needs all of you. The moral of the story is that you decide what Millbrook is to you. I chose to give this chapel talk later in the year because I know springtime is the time when people make the final decisions on whether or not they want to come back here. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. If one kid on a team doesn't want to win, it's going to be really hard for that team to win. If one kid doesn't care about memorizing his lines, the theater audience will be greatly disappointed and you will let everyone else down. If one teacher isn't passionate about what they do or what they teach, they need to leave the damn school and pursue what they are put on this earth to do. Every single person in this room contributes to making or breaking what the Millbrook School is. It is so easy to hate a place. It's so easy to give up on a place. And I'm not saying Millbrook is perfect, because it's so far from it. It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to have times when you feel like you're struggling and everything sucks. It's okay to not be able to sleep at night thinking about your insecurities and all the things that bother you. That's part of life. Like I said earlier, being alone and trying to convince yourself that you're happy is one of the worst feelings possible. The idea of my life before this place scares me, because I genuinely do not believe that I would be on this earth anymore. I don't think I would have been able to take what my life was. That's how close I was to being done with living. That's how badly I needed one person that wasn't my family to believe in me. And this school literally saved my life. And I'll forever be grateful for the impact that every single person here has made on me. Millbrook has so much potential to be great. It has so much potential to do to all of you what it did to me. I have a month or two left here, and looking back on it, I don't regret the things I did. I regret the things I never got the chance to do. You can't go back and make a new start, but you can start right now and make a brand new ending. Millbrook is absolutely nothing but a plot of land without all of you. Please don't give up on this place. Just be someone that helps make it better. Thank you.